Even though schools are closed, education is not. You are still learning and growing every day, and we want to help. The Tennessee Department of Education is thrilled to be able to offer a number of opportunities for learning at home. And we are so grateful for the partnership with PBS to bring you these lessons on television and online. I'm so deeply grateful for the outstanding teachers across the state who have developed these lessons especially for you. Tune in, keep growing, keep learning. You're doing a great job. Talk to you soon.
Hello, welcome to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all 5th grade students, although any student can join. This lesson is the 3rd lesson in our series. My name is Ms. Thompson and I'm a 5th grade teacher in Tennessee schools. I'm excited to be your teacher for our virtual learning classroom. Today we'll be learning about ecology. Before we get started, to participate fully in today's lesson, you're going to need a couple things. First, you want something to write with, as usual, and a surface to write on. You also might want a highlighter, a pen, a crayon, or something to liven up your notes a bit. But don't worry if you don't have those. Let's begin. What do we call the field of science? Who remembers what we call the field of science that studies the households of animals and plants? Correct. It's called ecology. Who remembers what an ecologist does? Correct. An ecologist studies ecology. What is a habitat? Does anybody remember? Yes, it's an animal's home that provides food, water, shelter, and space. Anybody remember what an ecosystem is? The title of today's Read Aloud is Food Chains, Part 1. Who can share what a food chain is? Yes, a food chain is a relationship of living things as food sources for other living things. I've printed out a food chain here. And if you notice, the corn is a food source for the mouse is a food source for the snake, and the snake is a food source for the owl. So they all work together, providing food sources for one another. Please draw an example of your own food chain. Remember at the end of our last read aloud, Zeke, the ecologist, asked you to think about how you are connected to an ant or bee. Does anybody remember that from lesson 1? Let's revisit those predictions or make a prediction if you missed the last lesson. Go get your paper and write down how you think you're connected to a bee or an ant. I'm going to restate those instructions. Grab a piece of paper or something to write on and write down how you think you're connected to a bee or an ant. You're going to find out if your predictions are correct after today's lesson. Please listen carefully to find out more about food chains and whether or not your predictions were correct. Last time we met, I talked about ecosystems that cover different parts of the earth. What is an ecosystem? That's correct. I love the effort you guys are doing at home. An ecosystem is a community of both living organisms and non-living things that interact with one another and their physical environment. Living and non-living things work together in an ecosystem. They're interconnected and depend on one another. They are, in other words, interdependent. Different habitats or homes exist within a particular ecosystem. Remember, habitats are where plant and animal species normally live and grow. Species are groups of living organisms that share the same characteristics. Because they also share the same needs, they share a habitat too where all their needs can be met. What do organisms need to survive or continue to live? What do organisms need to survive or continue to live? All organisms within a habitat and all habitats within an ecosystem are connected by a common need, food. Food provides nutrients and energy or fuel, which organisms need in order to grow, to breathe, and move forward. Who knows where the energy of an ecosystem comes from? That's right, it comes from the sun. The sun's energy is transferred in different ways as fuel for different organisms, but the source of nearly all of our energy comes from the same place, the sun. Almost all of the energy needed for life on Earth comes from sunlight. Ecosystems, from deserts to rainforests, may look very different from one another, but they all depend on the sun for energy. Energy flows through the ecosystem, passing from sunlight to plants, animals, and humans. This energy then also passes through plants to animals and humans. All living things within an ecosystem are interdependent on one another. They need one another in order to survive. Who knows what type of ecosystem this is in my picture? If you said rainforest, you're correct. What kind of habitats and animals do you see? Do you see trees, monkeys? Do you see any water or turtles? Do you see the ground? Do you see worms? There are so many examples of habitats and animals. Plants, animals, and humans are linked by the transfer of this energy in the food they eat. For example, when you eat an apple, you are part of a link in a chain. Where did the apple come from? Correct. The apple came from the tree. And where did that tree get its energy or food needed to grow the apple? That's right. It got it from the sun. The sun's energy passed from the tree's fruit to you. You and the tree are both links in the same chain, the food chain. The sun gives the energy to the tree has the energy to grow the apples, and therefore we eat the apples. That's a rather simple example, only with two links, you and the tree. These links, or connecting steps in the food chain, are called trophic levels. Say the word trophic with me. Trophic. You will hear the word trophic throughout the rest of these read-alouds when discussing the connecting steps in a food chain. Listen carefully to learn about trophic levels. Maybe you want to take some notes on your piece of paper. Because every living organism needs to eat, every organism belongs to at least one food chain. Every food chain has at least two feeding or trophic levels. Trophic levels show who eats what within an ecosystem. I'll restate that. Trophic levels show who eats what within the ecosystem. There are many, many food chains in nature, and every one of them has three essential or necessary parts: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Let's take a look at each of those three parts. All food chains begin with living things that produce their own food. On land, green plants are the main producers. Plants are the only living things that make their own food. I'll restate that. Plants are the only living things that are able to make their own food. We cannot make our own food, but plants can. How do they do that? That's right, they depend on the sun. The sun's energy enters the plant's leaves. Plants absorb water through their underground roots and take in carbon dioxide, a gas from the air. With the help of the sun's energy, plants change water and carbon dioxide into the food they need to grow. This is called photosynthesis. Producers include algae, mosses, and in addition to plant-like trees and grasses. Plants are the first feeding step or trophic level of every food chain. All animals depend on plants to live, even if they do not eat plants themselves. Producers at the bottom of every food chain perform another very important job in an ecosystem. As they take in water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide, they also release oxygen into the air. Oxygen is a gas that is essential for all organisms to live. There are producers in every ecosystem. Without them, there would be no life on Earth. Carbon dioxide is a gas produced when humans and animals breathe out, or when a carbon-based fuel is burned. The next trophic level is composed of consumers. Animals cannot make their own food. Even though animals and humans receive some energy directly from the sun, they also must consume or eat food to get the energy and nutrients they need to survive. Sometimes this trophic level is broken into more than one level or feeding step because there are several different types of consumers or eaters. The consumers in this image are the mouse, the boar, and the wolf. Some consumers eat only plants. Some eat only animals, and others eat both plants and animals. These three types of consumers have specific names. Who remembers what we call a consumer who consumes only plants? Does anybody remember? Correct. Those plant eaters are called herbivores. Herbivores may be as small as squirrels or as large as elephants. Can you name other herbivores? Remember, they're consumers that eat only producers or plants. The second type of consumers belong in a group called carnivores. Who knows what carnivores eat? You're correct. That's right. They are primarily meat eaters. Carnivores usually do not eat producers, but instead they eat other consumers. Examples of carnivorous animals include lions, polar bears, and sharks. Omnivores are the third type of consumers. They eat both producers and other consumers. Rats, raccoons, skunks, and pigs are all omnivores. Many humans are omnivores too, eating both plants and animals. Do you eat both plants and animals? Then, if so, you're an omnivore. Raise your hand if you're an omnivore. When plants and animals die, they sometimes become food for other animals. Have you ever seen a vulture or a crow eating dead animals by the road? I know I have. These consumers are animals called scavengers. But scavengers rarely finish the job. For that, nature relies upon another essential part of the food chain. Who remembers the name of the organisms that work together with the producers and the consumers? Correct. They're called decomposers. Decomposers are a special type of consumer that continues the work of scavenger if parts are left behind. Decomposers decompose, and that word means to break down, dead plants and animals by their wastes. By doing so, they feed themselves while returning valuable nutrients back into the soil to be reused by other organisms in the food chain. Just as with scavengers, some decomposers also eat living plants and animals. Decomposers, worms, slugs, snails, beetles, and other insects, microscopic bacteria and fungi are some of Earth's greatest recyclers. They are very important to an ecosystem. Without decomposers, plants would not get the nutrients they need, and Earth would be crowded with dead remains of plant and animals. Could you imagine? Energy is transferred in a circular fashion from one organism to another and back again into the soil to help new producers grow. If there were no producers, there would not be anything for consumers to consume. So there would be no consumers. Without consumers, there would be nothing to decompose, and there would be no need for decomposers. Producers, consumers, and decomposers are equally dependent upon one another. They are interdependent links in all food chains, passing stored energy from one organism to another. The ongoing regular completion of this energy cycle and food chain determines an ecosystem's ability to survive. What word part do you recognize in circular? What do you think? Take a second. What do you think circular means? Let's look at an example of another simple food chain. First, the leaf creates its own food. Next, the caterpillar, I don't know if you can see it on this image, The caterpillar eats the leaf. Then the small bird eats the caterpillar. Then a large bird of prey swoops down and eats the smaller bird. Energy has passed from the leaf to the caterpillar to the small bird to the bird of prey. Who was the producer here? Who produced its own food? Correct, the leaf did. Who were the consumers? I'll give you a hint. There were 3 of them. Can you name them? That's it. First, the caterpillar consumed the leaf. Next, a small bird consumed the caterpillar. Then the large bird consumed the small bird. Caterpillar, small bird, large bird were all consumers. But that's not the end of the cycle, is it? It is not. What is the final step of the food chain cycle? Let's talk about that together. The large bird dies and the decomposers begin their work of breaking down the animal's body into the soil and helping new producers to grow. This simple food chain can be drawn with arrows onto another piece of paper. But nature is rarely that simple. Think about what else could happen to change the simple pattern of these circular arrows. Who else might eat the caterpillar? Perhaps a lizard or a frog would find the caterpillar tasty. And who else might eat the small bird? Perhaps a snake or cat could make a meal of it. Lizards and frogs and cats and snakes are members of other food chains as well. When an animal from one food chain eats a member of another food chain, 2 food chains connect. And the chains begin to look far more complicated with many arrows going in many different ways. When food chains overlap, just like we're seeing here, the complicated patterns that they are called food webs. Many different plant and animals can be included in food webs. Let's return to our question. How do you think you're connected to an ant or a bee? Let's use a food chain to trace the energy that might connect to it. Could you make a food chain that shows the bee and its connection to you? Before we get together again, I would like for you to create a food web by combining the bee and ant food chains with your own. I'll restate that. Before we get together again, I would like for you to create a food web by combining the bee and ant food chains with your own. Remember, food web takes many twists and turns. The web will not be simple and circular. In order to help you solidify today's learning, you should be able to write an explanation of the relationships that exist between food chains and food webs. These are questions that will help guide us in our thinking as we write. Ask yourself these questions. Is there a direct relationship between what you've put down on your food web or food chain? How do you know? Can they function independently of one another? Why or why not? We'll talk more about food webs and food chains on our next lesson. I enjoyed once again learning about ecology with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your home as always. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson.
Hello, I'm Maria Lee, First Lady of Tennessee, and I'm so glad you're here. This has been an unprecedented time for our state and our country. I'm so proud to see how Tennesseans are coming together to serve and lift each other up in the midst of challenges. Each of us has a role to play, including you, our students. Right now, your school buildings may be closed, but there are many opportunities to keep learning. And we are so grateful for the partnership of PBS in bringing this program directly to you as one more way to keep us learning and growing together during this time. I want to also give a special thank you to all of the teachers who helped make this possible. We could not do it without them. Most of all, thank you for joining us.
The value parents place on reading makes a big difference in a child's reading and language development. You don't have to be a teacher or a great reader to create and nurture a love of reading in your child. It's beyond words on a page. It's about using stories to engage your child in the world around them. Start early because language development begins at birth. Exposing children to books early enriches their daily lives and builds strong thinkers. Just having books in the home, no matter your comfort level in reading aloud, can help a child grow to love reading and learning. Let your baby touch, feel, and even chew on the books.
Bah, said Gregory unhappily. Let me see your unhappy face.
Ask your child questions about the book and experiences the characters are having. Use the pictures to spark meaningful, engaging conversation, relating pictures to things in the child's day-to-day routine. Share the joy of books by bringing the story to life. Read with enthusiasm and energy in any language. Try using different voices for different characters.
Is that we're all here together.
Make up a funny story using the pictures, or act out characters and sounds animals make.
Hey.
Encourage your child to copy you and make his or her own noises.
That's good.
And most of all, reading with children and exposing them to books from the moment they're born instills an everlasting love of reading and learning that they'll have for the rest of their lives.
Hold on. You ready to have a snack? Yes?
More,
More? Okay.
more,
Let's count.
more,
1,
three,
2,
three,
3,
three,
4,
five,
and 5. Want to eat one? Up. Go ahead. How many did you just eat? Did you just eat one? Okay. Let's count again. We got 1,
more,
2, 3,
three,
4.
five,
4.
five.
You just ate the big one.
Before you take a drink, do you think we can make this water rise to the top without putting any more water in there?
Yes.
How?
If we put some ice into here,
How many do you predict can fit in there before it goes all the way to the top?
I think 7.
7? Can you count them with me? Let's count.
1,
1,
2,
2,
3,
3,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
do one more. Daddy dropped it.
11.
You predicted it would take 7 ice cubes, and it took 11 ice cubes. So, did it take more or fewer ice cubes?
I think more.
You think more? You're right, it did take more. Now, you can take a drink.
You want to hear a construction joke?
Yeah, I love jokes.
Sorry, I'm working on it.
Man.
Okay, everyone, for family time today, I have the cards that I had everyone make and write 5 things that they love about the family. And so we're going to take turns and we're going to try to guess who said and wrote what on what card. Okay?
Okay.
I'll start. Here we go. We always have a lot of fun eating lunch together on Sundays.
Elise?
You.
Yeah.
Okay. So this you wrote this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Who guessed it? Who guessed
Me.
it? Okay. So Amy, you get to go.
Oh, let's do. We sometimes have fun waiting moves together. What? watching movies together.
Watching movies. Who wrote that? I think
You
Elise
take
wrote
us
it.
to Elise.
Oh,
Yeah.
So who guessed that right? Did we both guess it right?
both
Okay, so we each get 2 points. Okay, we'll let Daddy go.
All
Okay.
right. Stir it up here. I love my family, especially when we bake together and then eat what we made.
You.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
me. What, you don't bake with Daddy?
At lunch.
All right, here we go.
Jeffrey, let's play a game while we're waiting for our food. Okay, this is a game about our facial expressions that show how our emotions, about how we're feeling. And so I'm going to tell you a sentence, and if you can match your face with that what the sentence is saying, okay? So for instance, how about, my birthday is tomorrow. Is that a good, excited face? Yeah, it shows that you're so super excited, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna put this menu up so I can't see your face, and I'm gonna say another sentence, and can you match it? I am so sad that my grandpa is leaving tomorrow. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
What kind of face is that?
Sad.
Sad face? Like this?
Yes.
When your lips go down, right? It shows that we're really sad. Yeah, this emotion is sad. Okay, so you ready to do one for me?
Yes.
Okay, you make up a sentence and then tell me to match the feeling to my face.
I wish I couldn't go. I could go to the beach, but my mom says I can't.
What kind of emotion is my face saying?
I'm sad.
Sad. Yes. Thank you for playing this game with me. I really liked how you used your sentences so that I could make my face show how I'm feeling.